say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body. Because I am more than physical matter, I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world. I deeply desire to expand, to experience, to know, to understand, to control, to use such greater energies and energy systems as may be beneficial and constructive to me and to those who follow me. I deeply desire the help and cooperation, the assistance, the understanding of those individuals whose wisdom, development, and experience are equal to or greater than my own. I ask their guidance and protection from any influence or any source that might provide me with less than my stated desires.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about fire. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family amongst lords of consciousness. I'm the void one.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
Broadcasting live from a shack on a hill in the Mossy Creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. It's Thursday, July the 18th, 2024. And wow, like right off the bat, before we get into tonight's conversation, which is going to be awesome, by the way, we're taking a break from the Tree of Life. We've only got 2 spheres left. Yesod and Malkuth to discuss, but we're taking a break from that tonight because we're going to discuss the out-of-body experience with an up-and-coming podcaster that was introduced to me by one of our listeners, Malorcas, and it's Brother Paul from the Truth Disciples is going to be here with us tonight as we discuss the out-of-body experience. You guys have to check out this podcast. It's so awesome. But before we get into this conversation, I do want to thank real quick. Let me just thank some people for their support. First, the patrons: Amy, Chandra, Tamashi, Anna, Jared, Gareth, Charlotte, Deborah, Abby, Normal, and I'm sure I'm missing some here, but I'm just going down the list. And for those that have helped out with the air conditioner that we're working on, so we're doing the tarot readings for 70% off. So you get an hour one-on-one with me, and this has been amazing, honestly. So Maya, Trey, Brian, Jennifer, Nancy, Jane, Susie, Stacy, Michael, and Angela. Man, I had so much fun today talking to everybody. And Michael, I can't wait to talk to you guys again. And it's been, I have more people that are doing readings and helping, and it's just been an amazing, I can't put words to it. It's been an amazing ride this week, actually. And it's not that bad in the shack tonight, honestly. Here on this July 18th, 2024, it's not that bad in the shack tonight, so it's nice and cool. And so I figured it would be it's a good time to talk about the out-of-body experience. And our guest that's coming on, and I'll be here with you while we play the interview. But the guest tonight, like this guy, when I listened to the podcast, Malorcas hit me up and said, "Hey man, this guy had Liam Christopher on his podcast. You should check it out." And it's called The Truth Disciples. So I went and checked it out, and it kind of brought me back to the old days of podcasting. Not saying that this podcast is old by any means. What I'm saying is it sparked even more passion inside of me to investigate this topic, I guess you could say, so to speak. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the interview. And if you got any questions, just throw them in the chat. But, man, this is going to be cool. You guys are going to like it, okay? So let me just jump into that, because this thing is going to take up we're probably going to run a little late tonight. Also, stay tuned after the broadcast, deep into the late night with Jess Rogie. She'll be here on the Fringe FM on the radio station, too, if you're listening on the station as well. All right, so here we go, man. Let's jump into this. Again, thank you guys so much. Really, like, the readings, the sale is still going, by the way. And pretty much everybody's wanted the face-to-face readings, but I've only worked on one recording for somebody, but you can do it either way. You can go to the Patreon shop, or you can donate and then email producer@thefringe.fm, and we'll get you booked. All right, so let's get into this thing. Okay, make sure that's going. All right, so we're here with Paul from the Truth Disciples podcast. Brother Paul is here with us, and I'm so stoked about this, man, because I got to listen to this show that Malorcas reached out to me on the Telegram group and said, "You got to hear this show." And I never heard of it before. I saw the logo. The logo made me become instantly intrigued because it says so much in the logo. And then I noticed that there was an interview with Liam Thomas Christopher, so I thought, I got to listen to this. Now, to be honest, I was more intrigued to listen to what Liam was going to say, because this guy's been hidden forever. He just now did a YouTube channel, and now he's out on podcasts. But as I listened to the podcast, I got that old nostalgic feeling again, that passionate feeling that I had when I first started this show. And just this podcast, you guys, the Truth Disciples, reignited a spark in me that I'd lost for a long time, man. And I haven't even told him this yet. I waited till I got on the show to say this, because this is what everything is about. And I listened to this show 3 times. 3 times I listened to this episode. Again, I kept finding new stuff, and that's when you know that this is a good podcast, when you want to re-listen to it again and again. So thank you, Paul, for coming on, brother. It's really good to have you, man.
No, the pleasure's all mine. I'll be honest, total disclosure here. Not alien disclosure, just disclosure in general. I've listened to you for 5-6 years, something around that time.
Wow.
I remember episodes from William Buellman. Obviously, that's very relevant to what we're going to be talking about. Solomonic magicians, Gnostic-themed episodes with the likes of Miguel Connor from Eon Bite. There was even one whose name escapes me that really sticks out to me. It was an optometrist who actually cured his sight partially through meditation. I need to go back and look at that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm totally honoured to be here, Joe. I actually tried to reach out to you about 4 or 5 months ago, in the hope that I could actually convince you to do an interview for our channel. So when I actually got a mail from yourself, I was blown away. It totally knocked the wind out of myself for days. So no, I'm really honoured to be here. So thank you very much.
Man, I think what's meant to be will always be meant to be. And back then, there were so many emails I didn't respond to, because throughout the life of my podcast, it's been complete chaos in my life. I just haven't revealed it, but it's been such a spiritual journey. And like, listening to you, when I heard you talking, going back and forth, I just want to start with this, with Liam Thomas Christopher, who's very, even now, even though he's more known now, a very underestimated occultist and author, right? The the vibe that I got from you, I was like, this guy knows kind of what I've been through. See, and I started coming to this realization after listening to lots of podcasts that some people, and we'll just jump right into the out-of-body stuff, but some people have had lucid dreams and some very real kind of lucid experiences in the dream world. And then other people have had like some real kind of I'm out of my body etheric projections. And this is where I kind of realized that until you have this kind of experience, other people don't even really know how to relate to it or explain it. But I know, I could tell that you kind of have had the same experience that I have, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. First and foremost, what I should say is that I'm by no means an expert. I'm like yourself. I'm an experiencer. I'm a seeker. There's been things through my whole life, looking back now, that I've been guided down this path that might seem crazy to some people, but it kind of just fell in my lap. But the whole out-of-body astral projection stuff, it wasn't until after I'd actually had a full experience that I induced myself that I realised I'd been having experiences like that from a young age. So it was interesting. But my childhood was really traumatic for various reasons. It was very unsettled. During my early teenage years, I moved about a lot as a kid. I was over in South Africa for a couple of years during the height of apartheid. Then after 2 years, I was back in Scotland again. A few months later, I was then living in London, which I stayed there for about a year and a half, maybe just over that. And while I was in London, just ready to turn about 17 years old, we used to go out for a break. I used to work in a warehouse and for a very well-known clothing company. And during our breaks, we would, after having something to eat, we would go outside and play football, or what you guys would call soccer.
Soccer, yeah,
basically, cool. Yeah. And not a real man's game. I know it's a bit of a, but
I don't know about that.
Yeah, there was an African gentleman who had came to work with us, quite mysterious, never really said too much. We would go for an hour-long lunch break, and he would just sleep during that time in the warehouse, or what I thought was sleeping. And one day I invited him to come with us during lunch, and he said no, he was going to stay in the warehouse. And I asked him a question. I said, why do you always stay here during lunch and sleep? And he said, I'm not actually sleeping. And that led to us getting into conversations that what he was doing was a thing that he called soul travel. Being quite young, he explained to him it was part of a religion he followed. That religion is called Ekankar. I think it was like a new age sort of religion that sprung up in the 60s, based in the United States, but spread all over the world. And I got really intrigued. He talked about being able to travel out of body, how this religion taught you how to do it, this soul travel. And he gave me a book with a chapter that had some exercises in it. And that led to me experimenting over a number of weeks, possibly around about a month. I mean, we're going back 34 years here. I'm giving my age away. But after about a month, I had an experience that I can only describe as the most frightening thing that had ever happened to me. I found myself out of body after this really intense vibrational state. This vibrational state, the only way I can describe it is that everything was resonating, everything was vibrating with an intensity that nothing I can say here will do it justice. But there was I was resonating everywhere, but there was no shape to my body. I couldn't have told you that's an arm, that's a leg. My body was gone. And then, boom, I was out of body. And what I experienced was experiencing myself from 5 different angles all at the same time. Wow. I had a central part of me where I was experiencing the consciousness level I was in, but I was also seeing myself from 4 different angles and experiencing it from their perspective all at the same time. kind of like when somebody talks about bilocation, but this was like 5 different experiences of me all at once from different perspectives. I snapped out of it because the fear just got so bad and it terrified me.
Did you think you were dead, possibly? Like you died, maybe?
When the vibrational state started, I couldn't actually stop it, Joe, and I actually thought I was dying because I'd never experienced anything like that, or I'd never remembered experiencing anything like that. So I did think I was dying. Snapped out of this experience and it terrified me because it seemed to have opened a door. Every time I tried to go to sleep after that, the next night or the next day or a week later, every time I was falling asleep and going through that hypnagogic state, the vibrations would come on again and I would actually jerk my body physically to stop myself being pulled back into a similar situation again. So terrifying. And that fear of dying, perceiving something that's so beyond words like that, took me quite a long time to get over and fight through, which was a big journey in itself. Yeah.
Wow, man. So all these exercises you did, you kind of led up to that moment, and then it's like you unlocked something that you couldn't. There was kind of no way of going back, right? You know.
No, there was no way of going back. The door was open, and it was a battle to actually keep it shut. It was as if I had awakened something that wanted to be opened, and once I'd opened the door to it, it was very hard to close it after that.
Do you think that when you listen to other people talk about the out-of-body experience, do you think that that some people just don't understand what you went through sometimes? Like, even though they read about it, they understand it. Like this, I'm not trying to, it's almost like I'm projecting this onto you because I feel like this sometimes. Like they understand lucid dreamings, they understand what their ideas of astral travel is and all this other stuff. But when you've seen your body as it is and you're actually like in the world as itself, and even hearing other people, like even Liam, this is just only my opinion, say, well, you think you're out of your body and all this stuff. And it's like, man, I kind of know, like I know I was out of my body, but at the same time, I can question the reality of the conscious state that I was in for sure. But I just think some people haven't had that etheric projection, you know, and even later in the episode, he kind of talks, well, I've never really had that kind of a thing out of body, you know? And so it makes me wonder, like, if we're missing something there. Am I making sense? Like, if we're missing something there and between that and the lucid state, maybe, you know?
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on this. I think I know, or I can feel when somebody's had the same type of experience as me, because there's a knowing to it, where if somebody talks about lucid dreaming and they think they're not leaving their body, well, that's a belief they're not leaving their body, but I've got a knowing that I've actually been outside of my body. You know, they say belief is the enemy of knowing. I suppose it's the heart of any sort of gnosis, any sort of knowledge again. But yeah, I can tell when somebody's had a similar experience to me. And I think, in my opinion, I think lucid dreaming and astral projection, remote viewing, these things are all linked in some way, but they might be different levels of a change in consciousness. Being out your body, for me, is different than lucid dreaming states that I've experienced, yeah.
Yeah, because it's more scary, right? But I don't know about, like, I only got scared once I thought I was trapped in a place once. But to me, it's more like I feel like I'm in the real world. I did experiments, brother, like where affecting the real world, where I would knock on tables and stuff and hope my son could hear it. You know, am I really knocking on the table? I don't know, but he definitely jerked. He definitely talked about it, right? And also, it made me question, well, maybe the illusion is just being in the body, right? Maybe that's the illusion. And when I get out of body, I'm starting to mingle this cohesive other place, which kind of makes me think, can we affect the physical realm when we're out of body? Right? I still have that question, even though I've had those experiences. I need more of kind of feedback to figure that out, you know. It's a little bit poltergeisty, but, you know.
No. I get it completely. I feel as if physical reality is only a small percentage of what's really going on with us in terms of what our consciousness, Joe. That's a kind of, and I'm still looking after 34 years. That's why I'm interviewing all the people I am and trying to get different perspectives, because I'm still trying to piece the jigsaw together. But when you're out of body and you're in these different realms, the astral realm, and, you know, people will say there's layers above that, the causal realm and so on, the laws are different. It's almost like the filters that we have on us in the physical realm that cement us to this place get lifted, and the higher you go, the less restrictions there are on you. You know yourself, you've experienced it in the astral. You can be out your body, you can levitate, you can think of somewhere and be there, whether that's instantly.
For real? Yeah. Like, I've flown in lucid dreaming, man, I have. But flying in the etheric state, what I call the etheric state, is a totally different experience. Yeah. I'm not dreaming. I just don't feel like it's a dream. It doesn't feel like a dream to me at all, whatsoever. Yeah. You know? Well,
one thing that I would say about that is a close friend that I'm involved in a Gnosis group with, who's just started on his spiritual path, really, was asking me about the difference between lucid dreaming and astral projection. Was there any difference between these phenomena? And I said, well, what I found from lucid dreaming, when I become conscious and awake in my actual dream, when I control that and actually I can gain control of my dream, I can change the environment of my dream, I can change how people look, I can change. It's almost, the way I would describe lucid dreaming as you're playing around in your own subconscious, which has a lot of value to it, because in the spiritual path, we're trying to improve, you know, break down some of what egoic framework. Hope the listeners know what I'm talking about when I say that. But when it comes to full astral projection, I can't change my environment. No. That's a difference for me.
No, man, like it's so I know we're two podcasters talking to each other, so I'm sure this is going to kind of go back and forth. But when I got out of my body, I don't know if you listened to it, I've talked about this on several episodes, but when I came out, I was really trying. So the first time I came out, it wasn't until after I'd listened to Buellman, listened to Robert Monroe, picked up Samael Aunvior's book, and then started doing I said, okay, well, I'll try some of this dream yoga stuff. But I think the dream yoga book actually triggered like I was already getting to this vibratory state, but I think the dream yoga thing triggered something else, right? But I came out of my body, went through the front door, walked outside, and I'm telling you, it felt more real than what I feel like right now, right? There was kind of like this weird low hum, maybe, kind of a subtle vibration constantly, but everything was just oddly quiet and real, you know? And I thought, oh man, first thing, like I'm going to test this out, because in that book, you actually try to fly in the physical world, which is ridiculous, right? But I flew, right? And I flew to that tree right over there. And it wasn't like I flew like Peter Pan. It was almost like I focused on it and pulled myself towards it, right? And I was like, dude, I was trying to tell myself not to give into astonishment, but it was almost impossible, because this was an amazing thing, you know? So when I hear people say, yeah, I've lucid dreamed before, or yeah, I went to the 32nd dimension and talked to aliens and all this other stuff, I'm like, no, man, I'm talking about something different. Like, I was outside of my body in the physical world in a different place. I don't know how to, you know, and when I hear you talk about it, I'm like, he knows, you know?
Yeah. For me, there's big distinctions. I've experienced different sounds. You know, people will talk to you in the astral. It's not really like we talk to one another here. It's really strange. I've heard hums in the astral realm. If I've been slightly elevated above that, I've heard elements of music, bells, chimes, sometimes I've heard that hum that we're describing here is more like a white, noisy sort of, almost like an ocean, but not an ocean. Again, an ocean doesn't really describe it. So I've had things try to pull me out my body when I've been in a hypnagogic state, tugging on me, giggling, laughing. I mean, these things will sound really frightening to somebody, and they are the first time you experience them, but one of the messages I'm trying to get across to our listeners is that the benefits of experimenting with things like lucid dreaming, and ultimately the one you want to be aiming for is full astral projection, the benefits for you as a person spiritually are immense, and there's really nothing to fear, but it's everybody's own journey to get through that fear. Having something tugging on you and trying to tug you out of bed is not something you're really prepared for until after it's happened, you know?
I've never been pulled on. That does scare me a little bit, but I've been shoved back in, right?
Yeah.
By these weird looking, like, not totally translucent wash shack kind of blobby things, you know? But I wasn't really I was trying to force my way out, Paul. Like, I was so excited about getting out of body. That's all I wanted to do, right? And then I think it kind of caused me to I'd get to the vibratory state, and I'm like, okay, let's go. All right, let's go. And I couldn't go. And one time I started to come halfway out because I got frustrated. And I said, I command you. I said this out of my mouth. It didn't sound like my voice. It was the weirdest thing. I said, I command you to release me by life and light, right? That's what I said. And I don't know where it came from. I don't know whose voice it was. It was the deepest voice I ever heard in my life. And as soon as I said that, these blob things, they were already kind of up there. I could see them. But as soon as I said that, it was less than a second, shoved me right back in. And I immediately woke up, and I wasn't scared, but I was calm, because you're pretty calm when you're in that state, right? But I was like, what the hell was that? And still to this day, I don't know what those things were. But I got this vibe. It's like, oh, no, you don't want to do that, right? Almost like I might have actually been commanding my soul to leave or something and didn't know it, you know? Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I remember, is it Journeys Outside the Body, Robert Monroe? I think it's that book that he talks about being thrown back into his body. And I don't know if he balanced that out by maybe he wasn't ready for that layer of realization. I've had a few experiences in my life where something has came through me. It's protected me. At the time when it happened, I thought I didn't know I had that in me. But then years later, I'm like, is that actually another part of me that I'm not conscious of more of the time, that took over my physical state and actually protected me in a very precarious situation? So
what do you mean? Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what happened?
Yeah. Well,
as if you don't have to talk about it if you don't want, but I'm just curious.
No. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it. My family know about it. It was a big deal. I was 14. I was in South Africa at the time. I've always loved animals, Joe. I always used to bring animals home as a kid. Frogs, birds of prey. I used to drive my parents and my grandparents crazy with the stuff I brought home. They thought I would be a vet. I was absolutely insane when it came to animals. And when I moved to South Africa, I had a room full of reptiles. I had a pet chameleon I used to take to school that I'd caught out there. I had a room full of snakes that I used to keep. And we used to go catching snakes. It was one of our kind of pastimes as a kid over there. Nothing poisonous or dangerous. But during that time in South Africa, I mean, South Africa was probably one of the most violent countries on the planet at the time in the 80s. Johannesburg was like, it was termed the murder capital of the world at the time when I was out there. And we were out in what the South Africans would call the veld, which is just like the countryside close by the area we stayed, maybe about a mile and a half out. And me and my friends took our shoes off and we climbed down into this small river-like stream, this sandy bed. We're walking in our bare feet. We had what we would call a kit bag, like a sports bag, with about 3 or 4 snakes in it we'd captured earlier on that day. And we're walking down this little shallow stream. It had high banks, maybe about 8-10 feet, something like that. And I heard a voice, and I stopped my friends. We're only 14. And I said, I heard someone there. Now, we're out, a couple of miles out from anywhere. There was nobody about from what we had noticed. My friends never heard anything. They kind of settled me down. We kept on walking. And all of a sudden, this gentleman, who was probably early 20s, much older than us, is standing on the bank shouting at us to come to him. Another 2 individuals came from behind him and had spread themselves maybe about 10 feet either side of him. And I noticed he was holding a knife, the main guy. You could see the handle, and I could see the blade running up the inside of his forearm.
And you were 14?
Yeah, 14. We were all 14. We used to play in the same football team out there. And the blade must have been 8-10 inches in length. Something came over me where I turned around to my 2 friends and I said, I'm going to motion towards him. As soon as I say run, run. And I took a couple of steps towards the guy. He was screaming, come here, come here. He was screaming very kind of violently, intimidating fashion. And I shouted run, and I turned round, and my 2 friends had already started running. They never waited.
Oh, man. They were gone,
they started running, which in hindsight was the right thing to do.
Yeah, get as far away from them as possible, right?
Yeah. I was a really fast runner at that time, and we had taken my shoes off. I dropped my training shoes and started clambering up the bank. I could hear these 3 men coming down the bank behind me, but I never turned round. I could hear them getting closer. My 2 friends got up, started running across this field, which had actually been burnt. The grass had been burnt, and the only way I can describe it is the type of grass you get out there. It's really sharp when it's burnt or cut short. Yeah. And they were running across the field. I was the last one to come out. I'm running. I go past my friends. I actually catch up and I get past them, and I turn and glance round, and my friend is still holding this kit bag. One of the men grabs it, punches him in the mouth. He rolls, manages to get back on his feet and keeps on running. And we ran for, it must have been half a mile to the highway. My feet were cut to bits, and I always thought about it after that. Like, I didn't know I had that bravery in me to actually do that, because I wasn't really that brave as a kid.
Well, they just needed a second to get away, right? They needed a distance between them to get away, and sounds like something in you was just automatically just knew that, right? Like, we just need a little bit of time to get away from them, you know? But
Joe, it was like I was viewing somebody else doing it. Something was talking through me, but it didn't feel like me. And it's not until now, after all these years, all the spiritual work and experiments and experiences I've had, that I'm convinced that was a higher part of myself.
Yeah, man.
That I didn't know about then, that came through to protect me. To this day, I don't think it was actually me consciously doing it. It just sort of happened, which was really weird.
No, that makes a lot of sense, though, right? So I always try to take things I try to formulate things in my head. I only talk about the Kabbalah because it's a system. I need a system to traverse this chaotic realm, right? The Kabbalah seems to work. But even Monroe, in his books, talked about he would meet these kind of beings that were helping him along the way, and he realized later that it was it was him, you know? And so, like, in that sense, I could see that happening too. But almost like, even in a Kabbalistic sense, if anybody's familiar with like Gabora and Chesed, right? These are like really high energies. They're not even anywhere near down here, right? But our guardian angel or Christ-like self, whatever you want to call it, is connected to that realm. So when something like that happens, it's almost like this. It sounds like this part of you kicked in and was like, wait a minute, you know, do this thing right now, you know, and just watched over you.
Yeah, and for years I tried to process it. Like, I was really shocked I had that in me, but it's not something I'd noticed before. But now I'm convinced it's a part of me that is hidden in some way, like out with this realm that stepped in to protect me at a time. I think people don't realise, I mean, living in South Africa for 2 years at that time, the value to life was very low. The murder, rape, the violent crime was so off the scale. Unless you'd been there, it's hard to make people realise that if they had captured us, that they would have probably killed us, to be honest. But
oh yeah, they would just take whatever you had and kill you. It sounds like, right? The
funny thing is though that they're really superstitious about snakes. So when they opened that bag, they were in for a bit of a shock. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool. But do you think?
But that's just one of the.
Well, just a specific question here. Do you think that when you were walking and you said, "I heard a voice," did you start feeling something then? Kind of. Did you start feeling like there's something's about to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I think.
And my friends, basically, they had heard nothing. They were convinced that I was just hearing things because we're down in this little shallow riverbed stream thing, the noise of the water and stuff. I suppose it's easy to, you might think you hear something. But yeah, that was one of the biggest events early on in life that when I look back now, I think I've been getting nudged along this path by something or another piece of me, if you want to put it that way. I don't know. I'm still not concrete about what my thoughts are about that.
Well, is that what you mean by, like, a while ago you said, you might have said this off the air, but I remember you mentioning to me that once you got out of body, like, you realized that this kind of thing had been happening to you your whole life, right?
Yeah.
So was that one of those moments? And if it was, what other kind of things did it make you realize, oh, this stuff has kind of been there the whole time,
Yeah, I would say when I got over the fear of the vibrational stage and eventually was doing astral projection at will without fear and really experimenting with it, I realised that I'd been having experiences like that when I was much younger. I've got a really vivid experience of round about the age of 10, being out of body near a mansion that me and my brother used to go and kind of play at, that was near where we lived in Scotland. This was before I moved to South Africa. But it wasn't until I had experience with astral travel for a while, I started realising I've had these experiences for a long time, not realising. So, yeah.
So maybe I can relate to you this way. So for me, when I first had that out of body experience, and I walked outside before I did the flying, the vision, it was almost like the deja vu came back, and I remembered as a child walking around my grandmother's house, looking at the spoons and the Jello molds and stuff in the kitchen, and it kind of freaked me out for a minute. I was like, whoa, I've been in this realm before. And most of the time when I was there, I was usually close to home. I was outside or in the yard or downstairs somewhere. Sometimes some weird stuff would happen, like the hanging spoons would shake or something like that. But it's kind of crazy that you say that, because it did trigger memories that I thought I'd forgotten about. Because I had nightmares and all kinds of crazy stuff when I was a kid, and sometimes I felt like I was being slung around on a roller coaster. I could feel it in my stomach, like I'm flying around uncontrollably and don't know why, things like that. And all of that stuff kind of came back to me when I got out of body on purpose, right? As an adult. Yeah. So that's kind of strange. I wonder if it's all connected like that.
Yeah, I think it's all connected. I think it's the reason that I'm really interested in consciousness, reality. What is this reality? I think it's the reason I'm interested in Gnostic teachings. It opened a few other things within me that were maybe lying dormant. I should ask though, before I get into that, did you experience the vibrational state? Because I think only about 60% of people, if I can remember right, experience that.
Yeah.
Not everybody does.
So for me, For me, I have to, like, and I heard you talking about this too, and I'm almost the exact same way. For me, I have to lay down as if I'm going to go to sleep, but keep my mind awake while I'm trying to go to sleep. And I'll get, the vibrational state will come upon me. First, it'll be like I can feel my body just totally relaxing like a cat, and even deeper, you know. And then once it gets to that point, it's almost like a subtle wah-wah kind of thing in my body, but it starts to increase. And so it'll peak, and it'll get to a peak level and kind of stay there, the vibrations, and then it'll die back down. And so that first out-of-body experience, I'd already vibrated a few times, but didn't get out. But that last time, I let it peak, like really peak, and then as it started to kind of pull off a little, I started sitting up on, like, just started to sit up. And when I sat up, I made sure that I didn't stop. Like, I didn't stop like this or kind of stop like that. I made sure that it was a smooth but not really a hard motion. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And even when I sat up then, it didn't feel like anything worked. I was like, man, that didn't work. You understand? That's how real it was. I was like, it's still not working, you know?
Yeah.
And I turned around, and there I was, just conked out. And I'm like, whoa. Because none of the perception shifted from that reality to this one. It didn't feel different at all, you know? That freaked me out, because I realized I'm out of body, but this didn't feel there. When did I transition? Like, when did it happen? You know?
Yeah.
So that was a really trippy.
Yeah. Well, we can. I'll put the term on that. I'll put a label on that as a false awakening. I've had a number of them over the years. When I read one of Castanada's books, one of his earlier books, and this was after I had been projecting for a while, and I started learning about lucid dreaming. And at that time, I didn't really know the distinction between them. But one of the exercises in Castanada's book was to do these reality checks. And the one that he talked about in that particular book was looking at your hands. Just analyse your hands through your waking day, every hour, every few hours. Really analyse them, look at them, look at the solidity of them, the detail on them. And that trains your subconscious basically to eventually bring that up in a dream. And when you see your hands in the dream world, they don't look anything like your physical hands. And that's when you realise, shit, I'm dreaming.
Yeah.
Sorry for swearing there,
No,
Joe.
that's fine. I swear all the time.
And one of the first false awakenings I had that actually happened to me, I woke up in bed. My wife at the time was down the stairs in the kitchen. I could hear everybody talking. And I just thought I'd sat up in bed, climbed out of bed, started walking down the stairs, came through the hall going in towards the kitchen, and I happened to look at my hands, and they weren't completely translucent, but they certainly weren't solid. They were like light, formed of light, but slightly translucent. And I realised I'm out of body, and I sat up in bed instantly. I thought I thought I'd woken up already. And so I've had a number of these when I've turned around, seen myself lying in bed, and then that snapped me back out of it, and I've really woke up in bed, which can be quite frightening again if it's never happened to you before.
Being trapped in sleep is frightening, right? Is that what you mean? Like by false awakening? Or you just think you woke up and you didn't wake? You didn't really wake up, right? Yeah,
I've actually been out of body, but thought I was not in normal waking 3D physical reality, and I'd actually been out of body, and I was walking around in the astral and realised, boom, and I'm back in bed. Basically, I hadn't been awakened at all. So, yeah, that's quite frightening.
That's so cool, though. It is scary, but it's cool. You know,
it's awesome. But I've actually got a question for you. I've been asking this people recently because I've not came across anybody yet that can confirm if they've had the same thing. You know, when you might have heard a song, I don't know what music you listen to. I think you're younger than me, Joe, but there'll be songs from the 80s, 90s, earlier in my life that I've got a real nostalgic connection to.
Dude, all of the 80s songs give me nostalgic feelings, man. I don't know why. They do. I'm not saying that. They really do. They bring up emotions I can't explain to people, you know.
So you've got memories attached to them,
Yeah.
or it might be a smell that you smell and a memory pops up in your head. Well, one of the things that happens to me periodically is when I'm falling asleep now and I'm going into that hypnagogic state again, in between that twilight area, in between being awake in the physical realm and, you know, falling asleep into a dream state, I'll get a flashback or a sequence from a dream that I forgot about from decades ago.
Wow.
But
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
so
get that.
almost like that memory is attached to whatever vibrational state I was in when that memory was forming. Being back in that vibrational, whatever the composition of that vibrational state is, it's opened that memory, and I can remember a dream that I forgot about for decades, but only for that brief amount of time. It's really bizarre.
I'll give you an example of this that I think you might be talking about this. So, when I was when I was a kid, my grandmother used to babysit me, and I forgot all about this, and I'd sleep in her bed, and I was a toddler, right? But maybe 4 or 5, something like that. And she had these side windows that I could just see the night sky with. A lot of times I would even see the moon coming across or whatever. And I kind of remembered that. But one time this police song come on. And I was laying down just listening to music, and the police came on, and it was the song "Walking on the Moon," right? And when that song started playing, I didn't even have the memory at first. I had the emotion at first. I had like the emotion of like I almost remember what it felt like to be that little and just feel all these just crazy subtle sensations that I'm not feeling as an adult, right? But also just I felt that age again, and all of these emotions came rushing up. And then I remembered that day my Aunt Sherry was walking by the bed, right? And I kind of flew up through the window a little bit and was kind of stretching out to the moon, kind of trying to go up to the sky while the song was on. And I remember my Aunt Sherry waking me up. She's like, "Come on, get up, get dressed, put your shoes on. We got to go," right? This was an ancient memory, man. Like it was gone.
Yeah.
But when I was almost like in the hypnagogic state, laying in my bed, and when that song came on, I started feeling that emotion, and instead of cutting it out, I kind of followed it. I like this time I'm just going to follow it. Where is this taking me? Just the emotion, you know?
Yeah.
And then it triggered back the memory. It's really weird because it's usually the other way around, you know? And even now, I still can't explain the feeling of it. I can't, but yeah, I guess, is that kind of what you're talking about? That relation to that music?
Yeah. I think what I'm thinking is that our energy field changes when we're in different levels of consciousness. And it's almost like playing back a tape machine. If you're back in that particular configuration of vibrational content, it opens memories that when you were in that state before have been locked away for some reason. That's what it feels like. It's almost like a key to open memories that I don't seem to have access to in everyday waking existence, if that makes sense.
Yeah. They're stored deep down in there, right? Yeah, way deep in there. And my Aunt Sherry, like we're talking, that had to have been 1985 or something, 1984, 85. I was little. And she played the Police records on a record player. She had all the records. Big Sting fan. I remember that. But, yeah, it makes you wonder, like, how, that just makes you wonder how the brain and the heart work together. Because when you read occult literature, it's all like it's just this thing that needs to line up, and they're just reactions of a causation. But it's so intense, man, the feeling of it. It's hard to explain. I'm even having a hard time explaining it now, you know.
Yeah. It's very hard because when I talk about it and I'm listening to myself talking about it, it's never going to do it justice, Joe. Number one, where language is not complex enough to describe what you see, what you experience, what you hear, what you feel when you're doing these out of body experimentations and so on. We just don't have the words for it. I think one of the things you said that's really important is that even trying to get people to, how do people get a grasp of what we're talking about when we say it's even more real than this is now, like what you're experiencing now in 3D waking reality, whatever that is. If you've never experienced that, how can you even comprehend what someone means by that?
You can't.
It's just,
that's exactly what I was thinking, man. Like when I heard your show with Liam Christopher, because I could sit at the foot of Liam Christopher and learn everything I want to learn about the occult and magic and transcendence and Buddhism and Tantra and breathing techniques. And this guy is amazing, man. Like I'm sure he's had several mystical experiences and but he even, like I said, he admitted it later in your interview, but I don't think he's had that etheric experience like I had. And it makes me wonder why, okay, well it doesn't matter really how intelligent and conscious somebody is, right? Because this guy's, I don't know anybody walking around that's more aware than this guy, right? So why did I have the experience? Why am I having a hard time? But when I listen to William Buellman or Monroe or you or other people, I know they've had it. And I think about it, and I do wonder if it has something to do with maybe past lives. I know it sounds woo, but maybe childhood trauma, or all of the most frightening things happened to me when I was younger, you know, all of the trauma in my life, basically. So, like, I just wonder why sometimes some people just don't have the experience, you know. Maybe they just don't believe in it deep down, and I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly do believe that. Well, it's interesting if you look around. I mean, your channel, your show's amazing. Your listeners are pretty much the same mindset as us. They don't rule anything out. They're interested in the other, what's beyond what we perceive most of the time. Most people, though, if I think about a percentage of people that I encounter in everyday life that even think about waking up, it's very small. And even within the people who want to know more, some of them aren't prepared to do the real hard work and experimentation to, you know, gain some gnosis for themselves. So I'm starting to come to some conclusions that maybe there's things that push us down this path, Joe. I don't know if you feel as if you've been guided in any way, but people, when I talk to them in a deeper level about this stuff, some commonalities come up. Usually there's a trauma background. Usually they feel as if zooming out from their life, the older they get, they've almost been getting nudged in directions, not completely manipulated, but they've been getting nudged in a certain way. I don't know if you feel similar about your backstory.
Well, not just nudged, but I've tried to go back 3 or 4 times. Like, just forget this whole path, because there are some things that aren't materially and pleasurably satisfying, right? That happen in your life if you're actually doing this kind of work, right? But I can't go back. And then and it's when I realized that, it's like I start thinking about all the times I start putting all of these things together. It's something led me to this place. I could have ended up in a million places. When I went to that bookstore and that one book fell off the shelf, and this book led me to that book, and that book led me to this book, and every job that I've ever done has led me to this place where I can do this a little bit easier, you know? But if I would have just started doing it back then, I wouldn't know. And all of it's like a feedback loop that's showing me. I've been guiding you the whole time if you just listen. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I listen? Because the voices in my head are running 24/7. But the listening thing is the things that happen in a way that where you're not. It's almost like it's not even in your head. It's in some other place, you know.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Going down. Oh yeah, 100%. Going down this road, I would say my intuition has got sharper. I would say the amount of synchronicities you experience have went up. You kind of know when you're on the right track because synchronicities seem to increase. I kind of pay attention to that now and don't second guess myself too much about my intuition and stuff now. I'll generally go by feel more now just through experience. But yeah, it's interesting because there's been a few big events in life where, I mean, I think we spoke off air about the incident I had in the south of France over 20 years ago.
Is this different? This is different than the South African experience, right?
Yeah, this is different. Yeah.
What?
So this was just over 20 years ago. Me and my wife at the time were on holiday in the south of France, and I was investigating, researching the Knights Templar and the Cathars, who were like a form of Gnosticism. And I wanted to go to some of their old castles. And we went to, the last castle we visited was Montsegur. We got to Montsegur. It was starting, the sun was just starting to get low in the sky. It wasn't completely starting to set yet, but the light was starting to fade. And we were the only people there in the car park. So we parked the car, walk up the trail up to Montsegur Castle. If anybody's ever been there, they'll know it's a bit of a hike up the hill there. And when we were in the castle, we heard doors closing and looked back down to the car park, and there was 3 people coming out of a car who then proceeded to walk up the trail. When they came into the castle, one of them took me to the side to talk to me, kind of separated from the other couple I was with and my wife, who was standing talking to my wife, and started to talk to me like they actually knew me. It blew my mind. Told me I was on the right path, keep researching what I'm researching. I was doing exactly what I should be doing along the lines.
That's
true. I won't get into specific details. My wife overheard the conversation and she said to me afterwards, that was like you were meant to meet that person. They were talking to you like they actually knew who you were. And this was a Dutch guy. And it was almost like something else. This is going to sound completely crazy. It was like someone else talking through this guy who actually knew me, was relating specifically to me. Bizarre.
Yeah, well,
So,
that dude, I think when you read these books about initiation and stuff like that, I think I believe that anybody that starts on this journey and goes down this kind of Gnostic journey, trying to figure this stuff out, is being led there, like we just talked about, but also that level of soul, that higher level of soul probably recognized you from another life, or probably just knew who you were, period. Because I believe in this like soul growth thing. I don't even know what you call the soul, right? It could be a matrix program for all we know. I don't know. But it seems like it's growing. It's kind of like this hidden mystery that it's growing and recycling and growing and recycling. And I think that you probably met somebody that was on that same path with you in a past lifetime or something. Because I've had that happen to me before. I've had some crazy things with people, even relationships, where I thought, how could that happen? How could that kind of connection happen? How could that person know me like that? It's not the cliche kind where it's like, I knew you from another lifetime. Like, I've really experienced a deeper, like, I know this person. I don't know how. I just know them. Right. But I'm wondering, like, what, you don't have to give me the details, but like, what was it that was he just talking about stuff about you being on the path that made you feel like, oh man, what is this? This is a deeper thing, you know?
Yeah. He mentioned specific things. He actually knew that I was researching without me even saying anything. He knew what I was researching at the time and really why I was there. Now you could say, okay, that was the last Cathar stronghold. So if you're there and you're that time of night being there, you're probably really interested in it. And, you know, I'm trying to look at it logically. He could have put the pieces together, but he said specific things to me, like he actually knew who I was.
Wow.
And for my wife at the time to come round and actually say that herself, her exact words were, you were meant to meet that guy. He was talking to you like he actually knew who you were. And again, it wasn't until many years later that I thought, the guy I was speaking to, was it even that person I was speaking to?
Yeah.
Or was it something else? I don't know, but there's been numerous things like that, you know?
No, to the layman person, I'm sure that sounds like, you know, all kinds of different things, but this is another one of those things, man, that I think that you'll never be able to fully articulate, but you know it's there. You know, like you know it's there. Your dream world may show it, or the people that you run into may show you those things, and this guy may show you this thing. But I just want to know more. That's the thing. It's like I want to know more. Like, give me the answer, because even though I don't know how to explain this, do you understand that there's a part of the mysteries that in this lifetime you'll probably never figure out as you're breathing, you know?
Yeah.
But it doesn't take away from the drive of wanting to discover what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how much you try to ignore it, at least for me, it doesn't go away. And I think that's that thing, whatever that is pulling you in that direction on purpose, because you're growing into something, if that makes any sense, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the saddest things in life, Joe, is that our culture, people don't even want to think about death. And I was talking to my mum's always been a really open-minded person. She's quite spiritual herself in a different way. But I was talking to her about how most people never approach the subject of death when it's such a big an event in our life. It's inevitably the only definite thing we know is that's going to happen. But most people avoid it. One of the biggest advantages of doing the things we've done and having the experiences we've had is that my fear of death is gone now, because it's not that I think there's something else. I know there's something else now. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits, and why I try and encourage people to start working in this direction. And the more people that have these experiences, the better for everybody, you know? Yeah. So your fear of death, you know why I think people don't think about that is because they know if they do, it's going to start freaking them out. And then they're just not going to, it's like, what's the point? There's nothing I can do about it anyways. But I think, like, I understand where you're coming from. It's like, that's the point. There's nothing you can do about it. So why don't you try to understand it? Because it's going to happen. That process is going to happen. And I'd like to stay, even if I switch into a whole new body and become something else, right? I'd like to understand consciousness during that transformation. I'd like to understand, like, at least what it's going to feel like, maybe look like, or the process of it all. And that OBE, the vibrational state, and all the stuff that we've experienced kind of shows us that there is something there, right? Like there's something that's going to happen. But then it can get a little frightening, because I heard you and Liam talking about this too, and I think about this all the time. And then I was just reading Dion Fortune's book, and she mentions it too. It's like, but are we, like, that's cool and all, but are we still going to keep being trapped in this recycling state of consciousness where we forget who we are, come back again, don't know anything, and then keep doing it over and over? Because that's almost as more scary to me than, in a way, than just death, you know? Yeah. I was really interested actually on that point when I heard you talking to your listeners about, Gnosis, Samael and VR, his modern Gnostic system, which is not the same as ancient Gnosticism. It's modern Gnosis is more of a cocktail of loads of different spiritual systems, kind of like spiritual Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Mixed martial arts. Yeah. Taking good points from different systems and so on. But I think it opens an interesting door, the whole reincarnation thing. I mean, I've been involved in Gnostic groups for a couple of years now, and obviously they believe in the wheel of samsara. You get so many lives, you'll get brought back into this again if you've not evolved enough consciously, if you're not elevated enough. But there's things about that still don't sit right with me. You've got the subjects of karma and stuff like that. So,
what are your thoughts on karma? You think that's a real thing or a thing that we made up? It's a tough one.
I'm still on the fence. I'm still on the fence because, I mean, I'm a grandparent now. I've got 2 grandkids. I've got a grandson who's 9 and a granddaughter who's just about to turn 3. My grandson has a severe heart condition, Joe. He's had numerous operations since he was only a few days old. He had his first open heart surgery. And when I see stuff like that, I find it hard to balance out the whole karma over past lifetimes, especially seeing the sort of soul that he's got, you know. But because he's got like the purest soul. If he were in his presence, you would just know. So I can't imagine that from one lifetime to the next, he would be in this incarnation with the things he's got to deal with, because I don't think his soul could change that much from one incarnation to the next, looking at how he is as a soul, as a human being, you know. But,
that's man, that's kind of a bittersweet thing, actually. The children are so wonderful, man. Especially like, I'm not a grandfather, but I could almost kind of relate to what you're talking. Because if you have such a pure spirit, like, why would their soul want to come here and experience all that? What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of it? We just don't know.
What do you think about karma, Joe? What do you think?
I honestly think a lot of it is co-creative. What I mean by that is any of these systems that we come to believe in deep down are there because we put them there, but not just overnight. I'm not downplaying them. I'm not even taking away the quote divinity of them, but it's almost like thousands and thousands of years we've believed that we reincarnate into, it's in scripture, it's in everything. We reincarnate into these bodies, and even if it wasn't real before we started talking about it, it's become a real thing now in some sense of the word, you know. And some I do like reincarnation as far as children and some of the proofs, like I know that's real, but karma, I think it's there because we put it there. It's easy to put it. So it's easy. It's almost like it's easy to put a hat on of suffering. Well, my family suffered. We've been poor. Or we've had ill health, or there's a curse on my family, or I did something in this lifetime, and I think for thousands and thousands of years, possibly we've been. This is the only thing that explains the unfairness of the universe, so to speak. You know. Because why else would this happen? Because life seems so divine, right? So why do these things happen? But I think there's something to reincarnation, but karma, I'm convinced, is kind of an egregoric illusion, which doesn't take away the reality of it or the experience of it. But I don't know. It's heavy, man. Like, because then you get to the whole question of like, what's reality anyways? Is it just this co-creative process between, right? So there's no answer to reality, but it's more about like the power of belief. Belief is so powerful, man. And when we listen to Monroe and Buellman and all these experiences, these people happen. Even in the astral realm, these people take their beliefs, their addictions, their fears, and their realities are even in that realm. Some are stuck in loops they can't get out of. So I think it's more about like, what is the nature of belief, right? Because that's creating something for sure. And then how heavy is that creation? How heavy is the affection of it, or the cause and effect of it, you know? Yeah.
I think the older I get, the more I try not to believe anything. And
right, it's safer that way, right?
Yeah. Through my own experience, I think there's another podcaster that's more in the conspiracy realm that's got an amazing quote, which is, belief is the enemy of knowing. Because if you form solid beliefs, you're not leaving any space to update your your knowledge base, so to speak. If you believe something is an element of faith, and I would rather actually know, I would rather experiment and find out for myself. And the weird thing is about consciousness, I don't know what you experience through your physical body. I don't know if you see colours the same way I do. I don't know if you hear sounds the same way I do. All I know is what I experience. I can't put myself into your body and your vessel and experience the world through your information collectors, your ears, your eyes, your nerves and so on. So we're really flying solo, and that's why it's find out for yourself, and that's why I think more people should get on this path. It is a scary path, but it's a rewarding path.
Yeah, because if you think about it, right, what if we don't have that many people exploring consciousness in that effect. They're focusing on their careers, their money, scientific projects, maybe their bodies getting in shape, maybe relationships, whatever. And at the end of the day, that one day they're going to look up and be 82 years old, in a hospital bed, thinking, what the hell did I do with my life? And who's next to me? Who actually loves me and cares about me, right? And
Yeah.
if we could only all just think about that for a little bit, I think the world would shift and we'd have thousands and thousands and thousands of explorers of consciousness in this way. And we could start figuring stuff out and actually become this more advanced society that everybody's trying to push towards with money and technology. I don't think that is the answer. I think the answer is conscious exploration. It'll answer scientific things. It'll answer all kinds of things, or at least work with it in that sense.
Yeah.
Because we could find our place in the universe. We could actually start figuring out what this stuff is all about if enough people put their minds to conscious exploration, or void walking, I call it, because that's the unknown, right? The void, and all we can do is just kind of express ourselves in this place. Because if we do it the other way, that's when suffering starts happening, Yeah. I'm going to let this place that none of us really know what the fuck is going on here, pardon my French, but I'm going to let this place define who I am and everything about me and all of my choices and everything I do. And that's when the suffering starts. So it's almost like it's trying to show us, hey, if you actually authenticate and explore yourself consciously, I'll let you figure this stuff out. And you know as well as I do that there's a mystery that's been embedded in texts and all kinds of stuff that at first you won't see it, but when you start asking these questions and then you go back into this realm of books and texts and mysteries, it starts unlocking all kinds of things,
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Like because you've asked the bigger questions, not just believed what you've been told.
Yeah. I mean, the soul reincarnation trap's gaining a lot of traction just now. I was talking about that the other day. But when you look back at the ancients, like you say, if we look at modern Gnosis and they've picked up from Eastern traditions, the Wheel of Samsara, these reincarnation loops, then you look back at the Cathars who thought everything was an illusion and this was a trap. This was not real base reality, so to speak. These ideas, these lessons have been with the ancients forever, but it seems to be coming a little bit more to the surface again now. It seems to be gaining traction, that whole part of the puzzle. The biggest worry I feel is the escalation in technology. I mean, we're looking at people talking about things like Neuralink, putting technology actually inside them. Is that going to blunt people's ability to actually explore the way we explore? For me, that's a big worry. Yeah. So you wonder about these two things escalating at the same time. Consciousness is getting more focused, but technology is ramping up so quickly right now at the same time, almost, maybe trying to head it off at the pass if you look at it.
You should look into this company.
Non-conspiratorially.
No, I'm serious. Like, you should look into this company called Final Spark. And these people they literally are a funded company that are creating microsynthetic human brains to run computers. And they give, I was just on the 101 podcast and he showed me this and I was like, nah, this ain't real. And then I looked into it. It's real. And they're running computers. They're doing computations and doing Python and all this stuff in their brains. They're small brains, and this company rewards and punishes these brains based upon the computations instead of it already knowing the program. It lets the brain do it by reward and punishing it. And I'm thinking, what the hell is going on here? Like, we don't even understand. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have pain, so it doesn't matter. I'm like, first off, we don't understand consciousness to begin with. So what you're doing, even though it seems very small and fun or whatever, it may be catastrophic. Like, you don't know, right? Like, consciousness to me is a very subtle and delicate but massive thing that I think is going to change everything. And You know, I'm a little afraid of the mad scientists of the world. Those people scare me more than anybody, honestly. Not because I'm scared of technology. I love technology. I love it actually a little too much. But the idea of these people not being, who's going to regulate what they're doing? They're smarter than most people. Is there going to be like a government official that goes in there and goes, "Are you sure this is okay?" You know, how did they even regulate the safety of it? They can't. So the scientist approaches them and sells them on this idea of this is going to change the world or whatever. And imagine all the resources we're going to save. And the government, whoever's, is like, yeah, well, we'll send somebody to check on you, make sure everything's okay every now and then. They're like, thanks, and give me the money. And they're off putting brains in computers now. For real.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's a crazy world. In the science field, you know, we've got science on one hand, then you've got scientism. People blur them together, but they're different things. But there's always a scientist who'll push the red button. We've seen that, obviously, with
exactly. That's
with the atomic bomb tests.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, this could burn off the oxygen out of the atmosphere, but they still done it. And they thought the percentages weren't zero, but they still took the chance without us agreeing to it. So,
and there's always a scientist like that is willing to do that to humans too. Mm-hmm. Like I think his name was Joseph Mendenberg or something like that. They called him the evil doctor from the Nazi camp. It was
Mengele.
Mengele, yeah, that's it. And and that guy was so evil, man. Like, and he treated it like it was one big science experiment. I'm just learning how to control human brains by this type of torture and that type of torture and this drug and this sexual thing and this other thing. And then, you know, as I started getting deeper into that, looking into it, our own government had projects in the United States that just picked up off of what this guy was doing and started doing things to United States citizens without them even knowing it. And I'm like, this was back in the 50s and 60s and stuff. Mm-hmm. And now they're trying to make brains. They're trying to replicate brains or tap into people's minds and stuff. It's like, I know. What are you guys doing? Or do you even have a soul? Do you have love in your heart at all? Yeah. You know, I don't know, man. It trips me out.
That's the key, Joe, to bring all that back, because these are all valid points. I mean, there's a lot of questions about World War II because basically the West, after World War II, gained all that knowledge, all the data that the Nazis compiled during these horrible, evil experiments, and then the West could use all that information without having to take any of the blame. So there's loads of questions around what actually was going on in World War II, who was financing it and so on. But if we bring it back to now, there's not enough love, there's not enough compassion. And I think people who take the inward journey, most people who take the inward journey like we have, it's not for selfish means. That's one thing I would say to anybody who's embarking on what we've been doing for years, is really ask yourself why you want to experience astral projection. What do you want to get from it? Why do you want a lucid dream? Do you want a lucid dream just so you can have a good time and do things in the dream world that you can't get away with in the physical world? Or do you want to do these things to improve yourself on a spiritual level? And then that basically feeds out into everybody else that's in your circle. You improve everybody by improving yourself. So I would say to people, before you do this sort of work, ask yourself why you're doing it.
Yeah, I would almost rather, Paul, be in a world where people are doing it for fun, and instead of these, like, you can tell there, if you get on the internet, there's so many articles about narcissism and this and the narcissist and the empath and this abuse and that abuse. And if you understand cause and effect, all you have to do is look back and say, well, this was socially engineered to begin with. We were all programmed to focus on how much money we were going to make in the nuclear family to keep the economy moving. So all of our relationships, everything that we do has been based around the financial gain, not of just us, but that's what we were sold to, the dream life. But it's real. That whole program was based on a program that ran bigger, smaller percentages, but massively rich companies, you know. Mm-hmm. So when you start waking up from this dream, this kind of mind virus, I call it, like, you have to face all of these things, and these things were there before you were born. Like, they're generations in your family. They're deep, right? So it is a tough kind of journey, because once you start like experimenting consciously, you also start authenticating, and then you don't relate to the world and all of these programs that are being told to you all the time. But I think, like Liam talks about and a lot, is that that's supposed to happen. Like, the ego is supposed to feel this kind of pressure that doesn't make sense to it, and then it tries to protect itself and does all these different things to protect itself until the suffering starts, and then from the protection, then the suffering, you just get tired of suffering, and at one point you're like, okay, this is all bullshit. I got to figure some stuff out, right? And so what I'm saying with all that to say, if people even just played around in the astral and lucid world without, having to take psychedelics, I'm not saying nothing against that, but even if they did that, I think it would trigger deeper questions eventually, because they'd probably get bored and be like, okay, now what? Like, I can do all this stuff. What does this mean? But we're not there yet. I don't think we're getting closer. Some of us, but
I think that actually happens. I think you're right. I think people who, do just have a bit of fun eventually do start asking some deeper questions. What kind of techniques have you experimented with, Joe? What are the ones that you've found to be more successful, or are you still trying to find one that's like the best for you at the moment?
Just to get out of body? Just to get out of body, you mean? The best one that I've found that works for me is waking yourself up at a late time. Like, actually, a lot of people have a problem relaxing, so relaxation is number one. And then once you learn to actually relax to the point where you can't even feel your body, where you're almost disintegrating, that kind of relaxation, the next trick is what? To make sure that you don't fall asleep. So the first trick that I think would use as far as a method is concerned is wake yourself up at like the witching hour. It seems kind of scary, but this is how I did it the first time. I woke myself up at the witching hour. My body's already relaxed. I'm not all hyped up from the day and all this other stuff. So I'll just walk up, go to the bathroom, maybe get a glass of water, get my energy level up just enough, but not enough to wake myself up, and then lay back down in the bed or couch or wherever. It's actually better if you move yourself from the couch or from the bed to the couch, right? And then use hemisync or whatever method at that point, any type of audio guidance would help. Any Robert Monroe, the ones that are free now, even from the old Robert Monroe tapes, are on YouTube. But listen to a very well-known author of or guide of the astral experience. I've got some tapes that I try to help people too, but I tend to put people asleep too fast, I think, sometimes. but I'm working on that. But that works really well if you're new. But once you get used to it, then you could. The next thing I would try is just the target experience. The target technique that William Buellman teaches is you might actually move past that whole vibratory state, and the next thing you know, you're just out of body. And I didn't think that would ever happen, but it did. That happened to me. So those two techniques have been really well for me, that worked well for me. And right now what I'm working on is, and what I've been going through is kind of like scrying, which is a whole different thing. It's more esoteric, but being able to, because I've read so many books about it, but I've gotten close, but being able to have an astral experience while I'm focusing on an image, right? Which seems almost impossible, especially an etheric experience. But through scrying through the Tattwa cards and the tarot and stuff, I've gotten I've had some experiences. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. This actually might be a thing, Yeah. So that's what I'm working on. But the beginning experiences, waking yourself up like late at night, 3 a.m, move a little bit, not too much, lay back down, listen to something that guides you out of body. The more authoritative, the better. What I mean by that, Monroe, whatever. And then the target technique, I think you talked about that too, where you kind of learn the esoteric meaning of what visualization is by that. I can feel
Yeah.
it, touch something, smell it, like really focus on the details of it, immerse myself in the setting of an object or something that's in your house or something, and then go back later, lay down, and just focus on being there again. And it seems like, well, that's just imagination. Well, you're about to find out how powerful your imagination is if you keep doing it, you know? You're about to like knock yourself out of your body and go, oh, I can't just say that's just my imagination anymore, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting, Joe, because obviously the very first experience I had was more riding the hypnagogic state. Mind awake, body asleep, mind awake, body asleep. You know, that twilight zone where you're in between awake and asleep. Sometimes you can feel a dream starting to creep in, but don't identify with the dream. Just keep your concentration, let your body get more relaxed, but keep your mind alert. And that's how I had success from the first time. But I would say the target technique for me, which I've also had success with, and I'm messing around with a bit again just now, it's a combination of both of them almost, because as I'm falling asleep, I'm thinking about the target. So I'm riding the hypnagogic state while I'm thinking about the first target. I do the same thing as what William basically suggested, with 3 different targets, like one after the other. So it's a combination of a couple of things I've done there. I've messed around with binaural beats a lot. I've tried the Gateway experience up to Focus 10.
What did you think about that? The Gateway experience?
I've got really, really close to having full astral projection. I've managed to get to the vibrational state with the Gateway stuff, but I don't think I pursued it long enough. I never stuck at it for long enough. I think if I went back to it and revisited that, if I kept at it, I think I would have success doing it. And maybe that would be a more efficient way that would, you know, be more reliable over time. I don't know. But binaural beats are powerful. People should try that, but make sure if you watch what you get online, because I make my own binaural beats and stuff, because what you get online isn't always a binaural. It's not a proper recording, you know, so you've got to be careful with that.
Yeah, they just play like a frequency or something and call it binaural beats. I've been working on some stuff for the audio store myself, and I'm like, this is interesting, you know, to make you know, one frequency in the left, one slightly off in the right, but also make it to where it, you know, it's soothing to the ear. It's not like something that's gonna, it's, you know, freak the ear out. And when you listen to the Monroe tapes, they put all kinds of other stuff in there too, not just the 2 tones. There's other things going on in there, you know. And it's a pretty interesting thing to get into, actually, how audio and the synchronization of the 2 hemispheres of the brain is that a thing that they knew about in the ancients? Because they always talk about the 2 in 1 and the single eye and things like that, but did they know that did they know about it? Seems like they kind of did a little bit, you know.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think we've been lied to about history. I interviewed Richard B. Spence recently about Crowley's intelligence work. I don't know if you've listened to that, Joe.
Oh, yeah, I
but he's an
interviewed that
interesting guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
You should get him on your show.
No, I had him on.
Yeah, dude, that's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting story, man. Yeah.
He said something to me at the end of that interview that actually made me realise how little we know about history. He said, even the historical events we know quite a lot about, he said, a historian like me only has about 10% fact, and we have to construct the other 90% to make a story. So we're way off the mark.
Yeah.
So
being a Golden Dawn magician myself, I wonder, like, every time I talk about magic, people, they go, Crowley, 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 Crowley. And I'm like, okay. And then I listen to Spence and I'm thinking, was the Golden Dawn a threat? You know, like if the Nazis were, there's definitely some occult stuff in Germany, right? Like the Nazis were into this stuff. The Golden Dawn was a heavily kept secret, you know? Yeah. Like it was a secret order then. For sure. And Crowley just comes in there, rockets through the grades like like it's nothing, and then blows it all up. Not only that, no one can talk about the traditional Rosicrucian magical teachings of the Golden Dawn without Crowley. It's almost like it was a psyop, this guy coming in here and just cutting through it. Not saying anything bad if people are like, that are, you know, they follow Crowley. I think some of his books are great, but it does make me wonder, like, did this guy work with intelligence? He obviously had a thing for being in the spotlight and getting involved in stuff. Like, could have easily been approached by an intelligence officer and said, hey, go in there and report this thing to me, you know?
Yeah. I mean, he's links to Theodore Royce and stuff like that as well. And Theodore Royce was obviously in German intelligence as well. So when you look at the people, Crowley just seemed to be in the right place at the right time. And when you zoom out from it, when you zoom out from it and you look at it, it does look like how an operative would conduct himself, you know?
Yeah.
He seemed to be in the right place in the right time too many times. I do think, you know, the amount of writing he'd done on its own, when you look at the sheer volume of his work, is genius on its own, but there's obviously a lot of, he had a lot of egoic issues and things that can't really be papered over. I mean, he had his faults, many of them, but his stuff obviously has got value in it. But yeah, it's interesting what you're saying about the Golden Dawn. Was that a threat in some way? Because there was high-powered people involved, yeah.
Yeah, so, I wonder. Yeah, there was a lot of like famous people in the Golden Dawn. There was very intelligent people in the Golden Dawn. France too. Mathers was from France, right? Yeah. So at the time, everybody was paranoid about stuff. You know, if you think about it, like everybody's paranoid about the other side and who's with who. And you got this organization that I'm sure there were rumors of with all these like famous people going to, and what are they doing? You know, like. I'm not saying Crowley was approached by an agent before he went into the Golden Dawn, but if like, I think Spence makes some good points that don't even have anything to do with the Golden Dawn, but it does make me wonder, did he was like, could he have just went in there and messed that up too, right? Because that could be a threat. Anything secret then was a threat to anybody, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Because the war was a big deal, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to answer this, Joe, but within the Golden Dawn, do they use more visualization techniques to spark astral experiences? Because there's an author called, I think it's Dusan Trachowicz, he's Eastern European, and he talks about actually using the Lesser Banison ritual of the pentagram to induce astral projection. He uses that as one of his methods, and I think that could be, if you look at it from a distant point, it's similar to what we do with the target technique, because you're using your visualization, and if you ride the hypnagogic state while you're doing that, who says you can't induce astral projection by using something like that with your visualization?
100%, man. I think when I started training in it, I was taught all these things to do, just like anybody else. And the bigger questions don't get answered. But I learned later, like, wait, so you want me to draw these pentagrams and imagine them as like shiny, blue, bright? Like, they start teaching you about how to visualize things to the point in such a dense and detailed way, in such a focused way, that it's almost like they're trying to bring the astral into the physical world, actually, right? And then later I started reading, especially in like theosophical literature, they really are actually attempting to do that. And so even if you don't bring things into physical manifestation magically like a wizard, this focus has brought the astral to you in the best way that we know how as humans, right? Stacking symbol on top of symbol, correspondence on top of correspondence, and the ability to use the imagination and focus in a way that you haven't even used since you were a kid, and then times that by more, is going to give you every opportunity in the world to have an astral experience, right? And then I'm just going to say this because I'm not an adept, right? I'm still working through the grades and stuff, but it's kind of obvious to me that they use the flashing colors of the tattvas and put them in the system of the Golden Dawn to trigger something there, right, in our senses, at least visually. And then when you learn about the Vault of Adepti, the seven-sided planetary vault that they sit in, all of the glyphs are flashing colors. So this is an astral launch pad. right? It basically is what it is. They go in there, they consecrate everything, they get themselves ready because supposedly you've been doing this for a long time to the elements, so you know how to do this now, and can launch themselves into, I guess, different states of consciousness based on the glyphs that they're looking at. So the whole idea of the Western tradition is to first understand things in this physical realm, kind of transcend through it, and then do a lot of work in the astral realm, which that corresponds to the tree too, right? So I do believe that's what it's for, right? Like it's a fundamental practical way to work in the astral realm. But then if you go back, like I said, you go back and listen to Monroe and Buellman and stuff, it's complete chaos. Like what the hell these people experiencing is almost complete chaos, but there's still an enlightening process that happens with them through through this process, you know. So that's a long way to answer your question that I don't know for a fact, but everything points that way. Everything.
Yeah.
You know.
I think there's so many roads to the same place. I think that's a message most people should get from this. You've got me really thinking now actually about, because I honestly believe society doesn't want people to wake up spiritually. No. It seems that way. So it would make sense that if a spiritual group is getting a groundswell behind them and more people are getting interested, what did we see in economic terrorism where, you know, like I'll mention the 3-letter agencies from America, like what they've done in South America and so on. You put people in there to disrupt it from the actual inside. You bring it down from the inside by creating, you know, conflict, arguments, make people's egos fight off each other. And a lot of these spiritual systems end up breaking down because egos, you know, they get in the way. So you've got me thinking about that now, actually.
Yeah, if you look at exactly what happened, like there's a guy on YouTube that's a Russian intelligence agent that teaches how they do that. They send a kind of like a mole in there to stir up the polarity between people, blow shit up from the inside, and then leave, right? And it doesn't look like anything happened. You can't blame anybody. It just looks natural, right? But when you look at the Golden Dawn and the series of things that happened and the egoic plays and the kind of the magical wars and even the courtroom stuff and all these things that happened, it definitely seems like somebody went in there and started poking people's egos on all these different sides just to get them to do that. And Crowley was one of the guys doing it. He stirred all kinds of shit up. He divided that thing, man. He divided it straight in half, you know? Yeah.
Fell out with everybody over time.
Yeah. And this was a place, man, that had high, intelligent, and we know through history that monarchies and royal families like to keep a magician. They like to keep an astrologer. They like to keep these people close to them, right? For even nowadays they do it, but back then especially. But if you're in power and you know that all of these influential people, say like Yeats and all these people were kind of like Joe Rogans and Jordan Petersons of that day, right? These people they're going to a building and doing what, right? Like, why are the most intelligent, influential people going in this place and we don't know what the hell they're doing? Then there's a war going on, you know? Yeah,
of course.
So I think once Crowley probably went in there and said, it's a magical order. He was fascinated with it anyways. And they're like, okay, well, go learn everything you need to know and then jack it all up. Like, make sure it doesn't stay there. We don't need these people talking. Not right now, you know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think he was very knowledgeable, but I think Richard B. Spence puts forward a great case about that. Occultists have known these ceremonial magicians, occultists have known these tricks for millennia. I mean, if you look at some of Crowley's work, you know, people get nervous when they hear about sex magic and so on. But if you look at sex magic or sexual alchemy, you'll see that in your Gnostic systems. You'll see it in Eastern cultures.
It's a whole different thing than what he was teaching. Kind of,
you know? I know.
Yeah.
But there's a particular exercise he done. I think off the top of my head, I've not looked at this for a long time. I think it was Liber 451. It might be, where he talks about coming to the point of orgasm but not orgasming so many times over the course of days. So you're combining exhaustion with that building up the energy like a battery, and then basically having altered states of consciousness through that. in the Gnosis systems that you looked at with Samael and VR, they also use a sexual alchemy where they retain the sexual energy through semen retention. They don't abstain from sex, so they'll build the energy up like a battery, and then they use that energy to help elevate their consciousness. And we know about chaos magicians. Chaos magicians will charge or empower sigils by various methods. One of them is by using the sexual energy to empower that sigil for whatever they want to manifest. So they've known about this for a long time. These things work.
Oh, yeah. That's, I think, one of the keys to unlocking our consciousness. But you get into, you can take, it's just like anything to me. You can take a very sacred thing that is an esoteric fact, right? And it works. Just like an orgasm and, a sperm and an egg creates a baby. Orgasm in this esoterically creates what you're focusing on, right? But when you get deeper into it, like if you study things like Tantra and all these other teachings about it, they all have disagreements on a little bit with the retention, or this is just for reproduction, or this is for that. But it gets convoluted. But I think they're missing the bigger point, which I think the Golden Dawn was trying to show people. But they're missing the bigger point. When you get the heart involved, when love is involved, it becomes extremely more powerful. It isn't just some kind of scientific thing that happens in the body. Yes, it is, right? But it's the thing that taps into the mystery of love, which is the greatest mystery of the universe, right? So when we treat it in that sense, like it's this divine thing, love, right? And you'll see a lot of these partners, especially in the Golden Dawn. I've even met some in current orders, partners that have been together lifetimes and stuff, right? It's almost like they're getting younger. They look like they're getting younger almost, Yeah. And it doesn't seem like it's the same. I don't even get the same feeling that I do in some of these other things where it's just like, oh, just retain the semen. And if you spill or whatever, that's kind of evil and it desecrates the body and the energy. And it's like, okay, well, yeah, you take a nap and you restore it again. I get all that. But I think they're missing the point of the divine part of it. I think all the orders are so close to it, but there's something they're missing, and that's a pretty big thing for me to say because I'm just some redneck from Arkansas, right? But I think
not at all.
And these are thousands of years of teachings too, right? But I think they're missing the point of what love is, right? Because we all know love. When you love a person and you go through that act, right? Several things begin to happen energetically in you. Not just the orgasm, not just a psychological thing. All kinds of things happen. A deeper connection, things that you can't explain about this other person, this feeling that you have. 1. 2, deep trauma that it wouldn't have came out unless you were with this person starts to come up, which is natural. The tantrics, they teach this, right? So there's a real growth and healing that happens with this connection and love that cannot happen just by looking at it like it's a biological process that triggers a cosmic force. You understand what I'm saying? Like, or I could just be getting nostalgic about the whole thing and putting my projection on it. One of the two. That's where I'm at. I'm trying to figure that out. But I just deep down I have a different feeling about it.
Yeah, no, it's a sacred act, and unfortunately, the way modern culture is, more and more people are moving away from it as a sacred act. And when I was certainly dating as a teenager or in my early 20s, it wasn't as easy as it is now. You actually had to put some work. You actually had to put some work in.
Yeah.
You don't need to seem to do any work now. But have you tried any of the supplements, Joe, that I was talking to Liam about? Because I've just started messing around with one of them, but I'm going to pursue some of the supplements that I was discussing with Liam. I don't know if you've tried any of them.
Which ones? Which ones are you talking about? I don't get too deep into the supplement game, but
Yeah, no, I'm the same usually. I'm really careful about what I put in my body, but mugwort, melatonin, huperzine A, and galantamine. Galantamine I can't get in the UK. I thought you could, but I'd misread the the website when I spoke to Liam. I thought I could get it here. I can't. I've got to order it from the States.
So
But
crazy. It's hard to get. Yeah.
These 4 supplements were something that Liam said can help, certainly with the lucid dreaming. I don't think it's the answer for full astral projection, which I definitely.
I honestly
It's a different thing.
The biological understandings of alchemy will help this process. So when you're studying the fire part of alchemy, well, we just talked about one part of fire, which is your sexual energy too, right? But think about it, the body being the laboratory, right? So if that's the secret to alchemical texts, then what you eat and, you know, the intake and the outtake is an energetic process. And you know as well as I do that your energy needs to kind of be at a certain level for you to have these experiences, right? So if you can understand not just the brain, but the digestive system too. So this gets kind of deep and more like Manly P. Hallish, but if you can understand the biological processes on an esoteric level, how they help, right? Like the stomach being the brain of the body and how it intakes things and stuff. And I think it's a cool thing to study. I just don't know that much about it except for the alchemical side to it, you know? So
Yeah.
I think it's worth exploring, man, because it might enhance this whole thing. It might trigger a new level of, you know, conscious exploration and out of body experience. And you know as well as I do, they all believe that if there was a deep ritual they were going to do, or a ritual that took them a long time, they would fast and do all kinds of things before it. You know, so
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Wow, what you said there's actually a really important point people should think about. I used to compete at sports pretty seriously, Joe, when I was younger. I'm obviously 50 now, but I've really done damage to my physical body because I overtrained, I exhausted it. And you've really got to make sure you've got enough energy at the end of the day. Especially if you're going to try and astral project late in the day, if you're going to do that, you've got to have some energy in reserve. Basically, it's like if you read too much, if you research too much, if you study too much through the day and use your brain too much, you're going to be depleted of energy. You're going to be mentally tired. It's going to be harder for you to do spiritual practice. If you're eating all the wrong stuff, taking all the wrong nutrients in, it's going to be harder for you to do spiritual practice. If you exhaust yourself physically, like what I done, running ultra marathons and doing all the crazy stuff I done for years, then it's going to leave you to the point where your libido is going to fall. You're not going to be as interested in sex when you're that exhausted. And again, when your energy levels are that low, that's going to impact your spiritual work. So I would just suggest to anybody that's going to try and experiment with the astral stuff we've been talking about, pick one practice, stick with it for a period of time. It might take a month, it might take 2 months. Give it a couple of months at least, and then if that's not working, try something else, but also look at the other areas in your life that actually play into that.
I honestly think there's more to, you know, I'm more interested in the OBE stuff than I am the esoteric, even though I practice it like on a daily basis. But I think the system of what you're saying here, like, so the 3 stages of the mysteries, right? You have theurgy, alchemy, and astrology. That's the Hermetic mysteries. The theurgy, this operation under the moon, right, where we're doing magic and learning about the elements, is in a sense, if you think about it, just balancing those 4 aspects of yourself to get you ready to go, to get you energetically ready to be able to do the spiritual work once you pass that level, right? And so these are like more deeper hidden esoteric things, but it does make me wonder, like, so the earth and fire and all these elements, that part of the study, understanding it on a deeper level, would actuate you to take better care of yourself. It does. It just does. But man, I just clicked in me while you were talking about all this stuff. This is why I love staying in this like lower levels of this thing for as long as I do, because I keep learning stuff, right? Like this whole thing is just this element, the magical, which is just the invocation of the elements and learning how to balance them and what they are and all this stuff, is really a preparation process.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. A preparation for transmutation. It's pretty crazy, man.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, like, what if Monroe knew this stuff? And when he, like William, and when they went into this chaotic, it's like, what is this stuff? What if they understood the esoteric principle of these things? Do you think things would have been different if they would have even tried to apply it? You know?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I've got a question for you, because you do get told stuff in the astral that is specifically put across in a way that is only meant for you. And what I would say to people is, when you go into the astral and you have your own experiences, if you're given knowledge about yourself, the universe, whatever, but it's only intended for you, keep that sacred. Not everything's solely for you. But I think the spiritual preparation work you're talking about, Joe, I could be wrong. If I've picked you up wrong here, please tell me. For somebody who's not interested at all in the esoteric work that we are, there's a couple of problems that our society's conditioned into us. Number one is most people have got an erratic mind. Most people don't know how to relax. They're overworked. They've got too many pressures socially. If you're not interested in esoteric work like me and Joe are discussing now, at least learn to relax, learn some really effective relaxation techniques, do some visualization techniques, do some meditation, proper meditation, to learn to clear your mind or be able to focus on one singular thing. If you do all that preparatory work, then getting into the astral becomes much easier, because there's loads of little obstacles in your way that try and stop you, not try and stop you getting there, but can stop you getting there. Yeah,
especially now. I mean, what you're saying, it affects me too, because, you know, I have to keep trying to go back and relax and keep doing these things, because there's so much brain stimulation going on nowadays that, you know, like there are days that I'm just not going to get out of body. I'm not going to have an experience. I'm going to go straight to sleep, right? But I don't think we should ever stop doing that. That's a good point. Learning the art of relaxation, like what it really is, and then the art of visualization and focus and meditation. Mm-hmm. Just putting those two things together, people should start getting out of body, I would hope. My thing is like, hey, if you're getting to the vibratory state, then you know you're getting there, right? Mm-hmm. So even if you do like a target technique and you don't have a full out-of-body experience, but you did start vibrating, don't stop, because you know you're on the right path. Like you're about to have an experience once the vibration starts. Just keep going, you know? Yeah, man.
Here's a question, Joe. Just, I don't know how long we've got left, but
a few minutes.
I never mentioned this earlier, but I've been in a lucid dreaming state quite a few times now, and actually had the vibrations come on when I've been lucid dreaming, and it has only been lucid dreaming, but the vibrations have been like a jump off point to create a full projection. So people might have that experience and wonder what's going on there. I'm not sure why that's only started happening to me over the past few years or so, but that is a thing that can happen from the lucid dreaming state as well.
Yeah, maybe. I've heard about that. I don't think that's happened to me yet, but I would love to be able to get to that state myself. I've been in an out of body experience, and then it started becoming a dream, which means that I'm sure it could do the opposite too. You know, where I'm like, I was actually out of body one time, and I saw this like vision coming in to the side that even started feeling like a dream, and I'm like, oh well, I tried to make sure I didn't want to go over there, because that was like the dream world, you know. So you've heard of people that were in a lucid dream state that have had like started vibrating while they were in a lucid state. I would just say anytime then, like if that vibration kicks in, like, and just that's when you really need to relax. Like if you're relaxing and focusing, don't let that stray, because it's almost like a doorway to something else, you know. I don't know how to explain it, but don't let it shake things up so bad that you might miss out on something, you know.
Yeah, it's a minefield. I've actually had that a few times happening. That's what I was saying. But it's a minefield, Joe, because you're trying not to get too frightened in the beginning when you're learning this stuff, because that can snap you out of it. Once you overcome the fear, you've got the complete polarity, the opposite of that, where you get too excited and you get elated. It's actually happened, I'm out, and then it pulls you out of the situation. So
Man,
it's just remaining balanced.
the first time that happens to me, I'm gonna email you and tell you about it, because I would like to experience that, actually, like go from a lucid state to back to the like a OBE, you know.
Yeah.
Because for some reason my mind kind of looks at it like, okay, you're out of body, you're in the physical world. If you go further, you're in the lucid world. And then if you go further, you're just in a full-blown dream. You're gone, you know.
Yeah.
But I might be looking at it on the wrong kind of levels. It may be totally different than that, you know.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
mean,
what
most of the time, most of the time, people are just walking around, even asleep in the waking state. You know, they forget, you know, a whole day can pass and they can't remember 90% of the things they've done because they've not been conscious of what they've been doing. They're in autopilot. So learning to be conscious while you're awake actually helps unfolding from the body when you attempt to do that.
Yeah, for sure, man. And yeah, I know I do got to kind of wrap this up, man. But I am like, I just want you to know, man, I love your podcast, and I'm going back through the archives. I want to listen to every episode of it now, and I hope that you just keep doing this, because, dude, there's so many podcasts out there now that they all just don't. You know how you were talking about that nostalgic thing that you feel from 80s music, right? When I listen to your podcast, I get that nostalgic feeling that I had when I was. It's hard to explain. The whole idea of this journey is in your podcast. I got that feeling again, and I want everyone to experience that again. And so I guess what I'm saying is, man, is I hope you don't quit doing this. Like, just keep going, you know.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it, and people like yourself, Joe, you've been a massive influence on me even wanting to put a podcast together. So I've been listening to you for years, and I'll continue to listen to you for years. But I'm looking for more answers, and that's not going to change. So I'm here for the long run. So yeah.
Last question before
really appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem, dude. It's front, like you said on that one show. It's straight from the heart. I mean it, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like, last question. And in your logo, I see all kinds of things. But one question I didn't ask you is,
okay,
are you still considering that this possibly could be a simulation? I mean, obviously, by your logo, it does seem it could be, right? Like,
yeah, 100%. Yeah. The longer I go on, the more convinced I am that it probably is. I remember watching The Matrix, Joe, the very first movie when it came out, and I walked out the cinema that day. Loved the movie, loved the technology. It was groundbreaking at the time, the cinematic camera work and so on. But I had this weird feeling, I think I might have said this to Liam, almost like a deja vu, like something being on the tip of my tongue, like it reminded me of something I couldn't quite put my finger on, and I had a nauseous feeling after it, an uneasy feeling. Like there's another movie called Vanilla Sky.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
And
it's
I think trippy. That's got a great metaphor for the same thing, almost like it's he's trying to wake himself up, basically. It's something hinting at you that there's something you should be waking up to. And when I walked out the Matrix that day, I had this uneasy, nauseous, deja vu-like feeling.
Yeah, you were about to take off running and start screaming, tech support, tech support.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a high possibility. I do think it could be, yeah.
Yeah, Thomas Campbell, I also talked to, had been on the show, has a theory about that. You know, and he was around when Monroe made Hypnosync. He helped design it and everything, and he wrote his book, My Big Toe, which is my big theory of everything. And he believes that it's a simulation, maybe not like the Matrix, but definitely a simulation where it's just like this thing of consciousness that wants. It's a feedback loop based on entropy. Like entropy just feeds back, you know, all of these answers to, it's like a data feedback of every single question there could be, you know. And at first I'm like, yeah, but what about love and all this other stuff and things, you know, there's some deeper things going on here, but he gets into it and explains all of it. And that's why I have no way of possibly explaining it, but I think it's cool to look into too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love all that stuff. That's my life.
Right. Mine too, man. Thanks for coming on, man. I hope we can do this again sometime, brother.
No, listen, it was a real pleasure for me, and I hope I can interview you sometime for the show. That'd be great, because you've got an amazing backstory, Joe. So you're one of the people I look up to. You're one of my, if I want to put you in the hero bracket of podcasters, you're definitely in there. So no, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, flattery will get you a long ways with me, brother. So, no, I'm just playing. Like, I'm trying to, no, I really appreciate you saying that, man. Just hearing stuff like that makes, it helps a lot. I really, really appreciate that, man. You know, it's flattering to me, and it's almost overwhelming to even think of, because when I heard your podcast, I'm like, this is amazing, right? So, you know, it does make me feel like that I'm not just some random Joe from Arkansas that doesn't know anything, but then in the end, that doesn't matter, right? Like, that doesn't matter, but it just makes me feel good to know that other people not only understand what I'm saying, but like they want to they're taking this journey too, right? You know, and it makes me feel like not alone. You know, I don't have the words for it, but I really, really appreciate it, man. You know, thank you.
No, it's my honor. It's my honor. I'm really honored. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You guys, I'm a fan of the Truth Disciples podcast, and I promise you will be too. Make sure you go check it out. I'll leave all the links in the video, and hopefully we'll have them back on again. And we'll see you guys on the next show.